What's up, my friends? Coach Matt Live. You're tuned in, and thank you for doing so. So today, I want to go right into the subject. I want to talk about addressing sciatic pain. I have several people in my life right now who are dealing with this, and I want to talk a little bit about what you can do today to possibly break out of pain. And not 100% of cases will be like cured by this, and this is not necessarily a cure, but this is something that can be you can address through exercise. So addressing sciatic pain, a little bit of understanding for how the anatomy works will be really important, but I'm going to talk about that at the end. I want to get right into what you can do. And it's not just about what we're going to do. The movements that we're going to do, they're very basic. You've probably done these before, but it's about how you're doing the movements, really focusing on your posture while you're doing these movements. So this is a 10-minute sciatic pain rehab routine. Okay, 30 seconds for each exercise. Now, one of the biggest causes for sciatic pain in a lot of cases, it's our sitting posture. We're sitting too much, and we are sitting in a less than optimal position, and we're putting compression on one of the lumbar spinal columns, and we're impeding upon the nerve, and it's causing pain, possibly radiating pain down through the leg. So let's first take a look at our seated position and try to sit with really good posture. So what I want to see here is tucking the chin, rolling the shoulders back, keeping them down, having light bracing of the abdominals. And now we don't want to be hyperextended, nor do we want to be rounded. And I think people, one of two things, they're either overly rounded or they're hyperextended from the lower part of the lumbar region. So you could be either one of those cases, and there's different things you can do for each of those. But what we want to keep in mind is neutral spinal alignment, trying to keep the natural curvature of your spine through all of these movements, but in particular when you're sitting and being mindful of this. So actually the first exercise we're going to do today, we're going to do an extension of your thoracic spine, your cervical spine, and while holding onto your hips. So I'm just going to be in a neutral position. I'll find where that is. And then I'm going to extend, roll the shoulders back, tuck the chin back, and then I'll come back to neutral, and I'll repeat. I'm going to do this for 30 seconds. And while I'm doing this, I'm not hyperextending the lumbar spine. I'm keeping that neutral as well. Okay? So then the next exercise, I'm going to go down to the floor. I'm going to go down to the mat, and I'm going to do some hip bridge holds, and I'm going to do it from two different positions, one wide and one narrow. Relax the head down. Let's start narrow first, and I'll bridge up. Try to squeeze the glutes. One of the biggest things here is that the glutes, we need to activate them. We need to get them stronger. And we need to get them in control when we're doing various movements through our day. I'm going to release. I'm going to widen my now, and I'll bridge back up. So if you're feeling like most of the work you're doing is coming from the quads, well, you need to just focus on getting the glutes more involved. Drive through the heels and feel that you're getting the burn behind your hips. The third exercise we're going to do is floor seated, arms down behind. So a big part of sciatic pain, it can be really originating from anywhere from the top to the bottom. So we have to have symmetry through our whole body. Something that's happening at our ankles, it can be affecting the lumbar spine. And in this case, in a lot of cases, tightness from the upper body and an inability to open up the chest, it's putting constant forward pressure on the lumbar spine. So let's try to stretch this out. And this is pretty simple. I'm just going to put my palms down behind me. I'm going to open up my chest, tuck that chin back, and have a seat and hold this position for 30 seconds. While you're here, you can take some big breaths, full inhale, full exhale. Also making sure that you're not shrugging up in this position, you're actually pushing down and sitting the shoulder blades down. It feels really good. The next exercise will be prone kneeling hip circles. Okay, so this movement, it might be a little bit technical, and it's not just any old circle. We have to do it a very particular way, so pay close attention to how we're doing this exercise. First of all, while we're doing this, there's no spinal rotation that's going to happen. We are going to work to keep the spine in a neutral position, so no twisting, no arching or rounding while we take our hip through a full range of motion. Brace the abdominals, and now I'm going to kick all the way back until my knee and my hip are fully extended. I feel the flex in my butt. And then from there, I'm going to rotate outward so my knee swings around, comes in front, and then I repeat this exercise. Flow through that motion. The tendency might be to not go all the way out, so you got to make sure to extend out. And then on this part, see what I've done here? I'm rotating from the spine now. Whereas here, I'm only rotating from the hips. Do it on both sides. This is one of the best indicators to see, are your glutes strong enough to go through this motion? If you're having a lot of trouble with that, then yeah, it makes sense that you would have some sciatic pain because you're getting a lot of that forward pressure put on your body when you bend at the waist. You're not getting enough activation. Your glutes are not taking the load, and that's what they need to do. The glutes need to be taking the load anytime you bend your hips. So next you've got supine hollow hold leg extensions. Another important part of this is we got to have that ability to brace the abdominals. So this is an exercise that targets the abdominal muscles and strengthens them. And while, again, here, we're going to be in a neutral spinal position while we do this exercise. We're not going to be overly arched forward or rounded. So I'll start here, crunching up, reaching, knees bent. From here, I will extend out as far as I can, flex the legs if I go all the way, and then bend back in and repeat. Great exercise there to target your hip flexor as well as your abdominals. Next, we're going to come and we're going to do prone, kneeling, CT, and shoulder rotations. So another really important part of understanding spinal posture and what tends to happen in our bodies, we always tend to go like this, especially if we're sitting a lot. This is a default position that we go into. So when we're training, we got to try to open this up. And not only that, we want to train our ability to rotate and keep our mobility and ability to rotate from the thoracic spine. Being able to turn like this. The lumbar spine is not so good at this rotation. So in fact, when I do this exercise, the lumbar spine I'm going to brace the abdominals to keep this part, no rotations happening here. The rotation is happening up at these vertebrae. So as you're doing this exercise, try to be mindful of this. So I'll be in a kneeling position. I'll just reach my arm out to the side. Also important to tuck your chin. You don't want to be reinforcing this posture here. You got to tuck that chin. And I rotate up as far as I can, eyes following the hands. Then I can come back down and repeat that motion. Do both sides. Really reach that arm. Ooh, feels good. It's tough too. So All right, then the next couple exercises, I'm going to stand up for these. Very basic, everyday movements that you will do. But let's take for a moment really and recognize what our body positioning is. And if you're having sciatic pain, I bet there's a little bit of room for improvement even on these basic movements. So let's think about this. The first one is standing hip hinges, where you can take, actually on this, I'm having you take an extra wide stance, and then we'll do a narrow stance too. Either way, you're bracing the abdominal so that we're keeping neutral spinal alignment the whole time. I'm not going to come into a rounded position. I'm not going to shrug up, so shoulders back and down. And then I'm going to hinge at the waist so the hips go back. I'm making sure that the knees do not collapse forward. I want outward rotation from the hips so that the knees stay out. And I'm opening up. I feel that stretch on the inner thigh and the back of the leg. And then I'll come back into an extended position. And when I come to an extended position, fully extend and clench the glutes at the top. So I'm going to bend and extend. Now we'll try it narrow, show you from a side profile. Notice that also that the knees stay back. I'm not shooting forward. Knees stay back. Hips go back. Torso angle comes forward, and I have this neutral spinal alignment when I come down. Think about this. Every time you pick something up, that's an opportunity to reinforce this posture and decrease your likelihood that you're going to have sciatic pain. Okay. Next, I'm going to do some standing hip extension with the arms overhead. And, so commonly in our day, we're unnaturally putting ourselves in a bent hip position, like more than is natural for our bodies to be in. So I think it's really helpful to add in some exercises where you're fully extending the hip and opening up, like you got your psoas muscle right here that tends to get really tight. So be able to open this up. Psoas muscle, by the way, is highly related to the sciatic pain. Tightness here is going to lead to weakness back here. So on this exercise, I'm just going to stand with the feet together. I'm going to extend the hips, but be mindful also, I'm not going to I don't want to overly arch from the lumbar spine. I have to brace the abdominals so that I stay in a neutral spine while extending the hips. Extend the hips, and also then I'm going to reach the arms overhead, tuck that chin, hold this position. Really squeezing the glutes. And then release. And that's pretty challenging for a lot of us. Next exercise is so a lunge split hold. I'm just going to hold a split stance position, but I'm going to try to do it with really good mechanics. Okay, so think about this for a minute. Pushing a cart, walking upstairs. Anytime you're in kind of a split stance position, posture is really important. So here I am, and I got 75% of my weight on my front leg. I got the weight pressing through my front heel. My back heel is elevated, and I'm kind of driving the ball of my foot into the ground. So I'm like kind of spreading the ground. Also notice I got a nice amount of split here, and I'm not tight roping it here. I'm getting a little bit of width as well. And then with this front knee, I do not want to collapse inward. I have to keep outward rotation from the hips so the knee is right on top of the heel. And then you just hold this position. And another couple of things to think about: squeezing the glute, bracing the abdominals, tucking the shoulders back, rolling and tucking the chin back as well. So you have perfect posture while you're holding this position. And I bet it will start to burn. Okay, do both sides. And then as you advance, you can go a little bit deeper even into this exercise. And the most important thing, I think, actually is to squeeze the glutes. Really, all of these exercises are about glute activation in various positions. Great. So then a couple more here. Next is going to be standing W pulls. This will be another opportunity to just strengthen our upper back muscles so that when we're sitting, doing whatever we're doing throughout our day, which will tend to be bent over hip bent position exercises, maintain, we have the strength, we develop the strength of the upper back to keep from falling forward like this. So this is standing W pulls. I'm just going to stand tall. Again, make sure you're tucking the chin, rolling the shoulders back, not hyperextending the spine, but keeping it neutral. And then I'm going to just pull back into a W shape, try to pull the elbows and the hands back as far as you can, and then relax and repeat. Check yourself. Are you shrugging? If you're shrugging, then sit those shoulders down. One of the best right there. One of the best. Super simple. Oh, these are all body weight. It's really straightforward movements. But if you're thinking about your posture and you go through this routine, you're going to feel so good. All right, the last, and this is probably the most important one, is the standing lateral leg lift. So I've been talking a lot about glutes, but particularly your ability to rotate outward, those lateral glute muscles, those are the ones that really tend to get weak. And there's an association between weak lateral glutes and sciatic pain. So this is huge. And it's a twofer. It's going to be a balance exercise. If you need to hold on to a post and to be able to lift the leg nice and high to the side, then you can use some assistance. But also just try to balance, because that's part of this. So I'm going to stand tall through this leg. I'm not going to sit kinked like this. I'm going to be fully extended, flexing that glute from the start. Establish the balance. And then with the other leg now, I'm going to lift it out to the side. Now notice, actually, I'm not going that high. I'm going as high as I can while keeping my toe pointed straight ahead. So if I were to go like this, I would be lifting with the hip flexor. I'm not trying to train the hip flexor right now. I want to get the glutes. So I got to lift straight out to the side and keep the toe pointed straight ahead. We'll do the other side. And you can feel it. You want to feel that burn back to the side of the hip. This is where I feel it. I feel like there's a little ring right here of muscle. That's what's lifting my leg. Okay? So try that out if you're having any problems. I'm not even going to talk too much about all the background, the physiology, and what is known about sciatic pain and the treatments for it. I'm just going to say this. Try those exercises and see how it goes if you're having any trouble, okay? And I'm gonna leave it at that for today. Oh, I want to give a shout to thank you, Susan, Mike, Wes, Hannah, Kimberly, Aaron, Tim, and Nick for checking in today. Very cool, very cool. And sciatic is my worst enemy. Yeah, and especially I know for certain athletes, a lot of runners will experience this. Really, anybody who's doing athletes who are doing like high volume type of activities, and running is one of these, playing soccer is one of these. If you have a movement fault, even a slight one, this is just with our body's design and then our sitting. I've been talking a little bit about sitting too and sitting posture, and that might be one of the most important things. Another really important thing, and I don't even see very much research on this, intuitively it makes sense. Your sleeping posture. Your sleeping posture is really important, because think about how many hours per night you most of your life, if you're, the most common position is whatever your sleeping position is. So the same mechanics apply when you're sleeping. I know I had a client, he told me that he sleeps like this. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's that's a tough position to be in. So think about that. Be observant. What is your sleeping posture? But then your sitting posture, like I said, and then when you're exercising, there's another opportunity to think about your posture and your running mechanics. I have other videos where I talked about running mechanics, but the exercises I gave today are really basic, no equipment needed. You can just do that anywhere. It's just postural awareness. That's the number one thing. And then you can carry that on to more advanced activities as well. So yeah, cool. Thanks, Katie, for checking in as well. And I hope this was helpful. I will be back with you next Wednesday for another hot topic. If you guys have any suggestions, shoot me a message. And I hope you all have a great week. Take it easy.